Hey folks, I'm Deacon Randy Ori, and welcome to this podcast entitled How Mardi Gras Gives Way to Lent. My wife and I grew up in New Orleans, and so we take for granted that from January 6th, the Feast of the Epiphany, all the way until the day before Ash Wednesday, is an extraordinarily important and unique time of celebration. Throughout the rest of the continental United States, which is immersed in the frigid season of winter, it is time to sweep up the last needles from the Christmas tree, or to take time to watch the Super Bowl from your couch, and also a time for all of us to hope for an early spring that will bring an explosion of color to our gardens. And of course, all of that is great. But for those of us throughout Louisiana and the Gulf Coast region, and especially those of us from New Orleans, this is a time known as the carnival season, or in shorthand, Mardi Gras. Now, from age about 4 until age 14, going to my aunt's house in the neighborhood called the Irish Channel was just part of growing up in New Orleans. Beginning in February or March, seeing the Mardi Gras beads hanging delicately from those majestic oak trees was natural. Well, as natural as enduring a Saints losing season, or as natural as surviving a hot, humid day in August. In this podcast, I would like to sketch out a bit about Mardi Gras and how it very powerfully gives way to the Catholic season of Lent. So while Mardi Gras is the most recognizable phrase or term, let's begin with a brief summary of a few other words or phrases that are relevant. Let's start with the French terms, since the celebration's rich history is tied to Europe and particularly to France. From the French, Mardi Gras means Fat Tuesday. And the day before Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras is known as Lundi Gras, an important day in the season in and of itself. So we have Lundi Gras, Fat Monday, and Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday. Now another term you'll often hear is carnival, which comes from the Latin, and the primary root is carne, which means flesh or meat. And so carnival means remove meat or goodbye to meat. Finally, a lesser-known term comes from the Old English, Shrove Tuesday, which means confess Tuesday. It's the anticipatory day before Ash Wednesday. And so a final word about these words of the season. Carnival is generally used to represent the entire season, which starts with the coming of the king cake on King's Day or the Epiphany, while Mardi Gras is technically only referring to the day itself, Fat Tuesday. But there's no reason to get rigid here. You'll hear locals, even myself, certainly refer to the Mardi Gras season or to Carnival Day, and that's all good. As you can see, in terms like Shrove Tuesday, Carnival, or even Fat Tuesday, there are subtle hints at what Mardi Gras represents, or better said, what Mardi Gras anticipates: Ash Wednesday and the Lenten season. Now, being from New Orleans, I'm well aware of the frivolity and even the debauchery associated with Mardi Gras Day. But honestly, growing up and going to carnival parades for weeks leading up to Mardi Gras Day, the season is best characterized by family and friends gathering to celebrate through the parades our culture, our traditions, and the wonderful foods that the Lord has lavished upon us. Of course, there's a celebratory tone to the season, which culminates on Fat Tuesday. But that day can certainly be enjoyed in an appropriately festive manner. So how does Mardi Gras give way to Ash Wednesday and the beginning of Lent. I came upon this notion many years ago when I was asked to lead sessions in Catholic parishes on the connection between Mardi Gras and Lent. For me, there is no greater and no more powerful image of Mardi Gras' relationship to the beginning of Lent than the image of the midnight street cleaners that descend on the French Quarter right at midnight on Mardi Gras, as Tuesday gives way to Wednesday. You know, it used to be said, and I'm not sure if this is more legend than fact, that the success of a Mardi Gras could be measured in part by weighing the collected trash from the streets of New Orleans year over year. To be sure, the amount of garbage and trash left behind by millions of people is almost unimaginable. But as the street cleaners pile up the trash to take it away before washing the streets, you get in this very mundane set of activities a powerful symbolic image. The trash and the grime of the streets represent our natural tendencies, our failings, our weaknesses, our selfishness, and in short, our sinfulness. But the penitential season of Lent begins in quiet austerity with Ash Wednesday, and the season follows with 3 disciplines of Lent: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, or charity. Now, the piled up refuse of Mardi Gras night is not the final word. The Lord makes his presence known to us in various ways in the somber austerity of the Lenten season, so characterized by sacrifice, confession, penance, reconciliation, and conversion. While Carnival, of course, is not a liturgical season of the Church, in a way, with proper intention, one could say that Carnival does give way to Lent, approximating how Lent, much more importantly, is preparatory for the great celebration of Holy Easter and the Easter season. Finally, as we bring this podcast to a close, consider the images on the screen and let the king cake represent the goodness of the Lord in all the material things that he gives us, things that we need and things that go beyond what we need, that make life worth enjoying and celebrating. Let the piled up trash on the streets of New Orleans bring all that celebration to a gentle end, or at least to a conspicuous reduction, as we enter the season of the Lord's conversion of our hearts, Lent. And let the natural tendencies of our heart, as symbolized by Mardi Gras, indeed give way to the spiritual graces of Lent and beyond. Friends, it is my prayer for you that this Lenten season be an opportunity to notice the Lord in the quiet austerity of this season, in the graces of prayer, fasting, and charity, so that you might come to Good Friday and Easter united to the Lord in his love for you. Consider listening to my podcast for 2024 Ash Wednesday and Lent, or earlier versions of Lenten introductions. Friends, I'm Deacon Randy Ori from Ordinary Time Catholic, and thank you for listening. Let's pray for each other.